Hello and welcome. I have the delight and the pleasure today to be with the wonderful Chana Studley. We have met before, we have had some conversations, and it's really super cool to be here with you today because you have just got a brand new book out. How many books is that now?
This is number 4.
Number 4. Wow.
Oh gosh.
So I haven't read your new book yet, I have to confess. I'm still reading the lovely Linda Pettit's book. That's here. I'm still reading that one, which is a gorgeous book, and I do love books,
Yeah.
but yours is now on my list firmly. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll maybe explore what the book's about? Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Deborah. It's such a thank you for asking. It's really nice to be here and chat with you. And we were just realizing how, if we'd been in school together, we would have been in the same year.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Oh, amazing. Um, so yeah, so let's see, tell you about me. Um, I had this really big career in Hollywood in film for 20 something years. And I thought, when I was in I thought I'd arrived, you know, I thought that's it, and I was I guess in my 30s when I was doing that. And it seemed like I was, one with the world, and I'm flying around and I'm working with these big famous people. And it was amazing. I was getting paid silly money to I did special effects. So I was making stuff with my hands, which I love to do. I've been doing that since I was a small child. In fact, I always used to joke that I owed my career to Blue Peter. So, but don't know, that's a British TV show that was like a children's show when we were little. We would come home from school. I think it was 3 days a week. I think
Yes.
you'd come home from school and you'd watch Blue Peter, and they would make stuff. They would have all like look how to look after your pet and how to like holiday stuff, and then then you'd make a Mother's Day gift out of a toilet roll and a shoebox and some tissue paper. Here's what I made earlier. And so I grew up, my parents were very practical like that too. So I just grew up in my house. If you wanted something, you made it.
Mhm.
So working with my hands, making stuff producing something out of nothing was just what we did, and people do it with cooking, with gardening, and I did it with stuff. And so I was able to then start in the theater, and then TV, then movies, and I ended up living in California for about 16 years. So I grew up in England and then moved to America. And I was there for about 16 years working on some really big movies that took me to Australia and Texas and all around California. And it was amazing.
Mm.
But towards the end of it, I kind of had this niggling feeling that I should be doing something more worthwhile. And I'd been coaching ever since I was in college, or they used to call it counseling then. I trained with Manchester Rape Crisis Centre when I was in college. I went to Manchester University. And so I'd always done it as a volunteer thing and in between projects, because especially the kind of movies I worked on, I was known for making copies of real animals. So there'd be, I could have 2 or 3 months off in between each project.
Mm.
And I don't want I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit there and do nothing. So I would go and volunteer at the local Boys and Girls Club, or with different charities. I worked with people with addictions and kids and trauma and all kinds of things. And so I kind of had these two careers. One was coaching, one was, making stuff for movies or the theater. And then when I started feeling like, that I needed something more, I felt maybe I should be working on documentaries. And I thought, no, that's not it. And I just got that day when I just couldn't do it anymore, and I left the film business. It's like, now what am I going to do? Because that's all I've known, entertainment business for 20 something years. And so I started teaching, and I started teaching art classes to kids because that's what I knew how to do. And then fell in love with kids and fell in love with teaching, and then worked in a school. And then I moved here, and I now live in Israel. And so the coaching thing kind of just came to be my full-time job now. It's been my full-time job for about 7 or 8 years now. And then I started writing books. So yeah, that kind of brings us up to today.
Wow. What an exciting life so far.
Yeah, so far.
Yeah, so far, so far. One of the things that we spoke about just before we started and jumped on this call, press record, was I was saying, like you said, we would have been in the same year at school. And
Mhm,
when I think back to my grandma being this age, like turning 60, it
mhm.
felt like she was really, really old. And yet now, and you know, talking to you, what you've done, what's just a new book out, I know it just doesn't feel like that. It feels like there is so much more left to explore, so much more
Yeah,
to do, to dive into. So
yeah,
can you tell us a little bit about your latest book? Because I'm guessing you're
yeah.
excited about it at the moment.
I am. I'm very excited because 10 minutes ago I found out it's an Amazon #1 bestseller after 2 days.
Oh, wow, that is
Like it's
amazing.
technically it's three
Congratulations.
days, but yes, yeah, yeah. So that's a really, really, really exciting. I'm happy to share that with you. Um, yeah, this. So my other books are novels. You know, they're
Yeah.
stories, and this one is different because um, it was about, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 years ago now. It's kind of a bit of a blur, but I was sitting on my sofa and on Saturday afternoon, and I was thinking, I don't even like this. You know how like sometimes an idea just pops in your head, right?
Yeah.
And and I suddenly had this idea. I don't know what I was thinking about, but I thought there are so many people in the Three Principles community who have recovered from some kind of mental health diagnosis. You know,
Mm,
I've met many, some of my clients, some of our colleagues, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to collect those stories? Like, what a great resource.
mm,
And the resource could be for other coaches and counselors. It could be for people who are looking for hope. You know, maybe they've had that particular diagnosis and they want to, you know, hear how this person got well. And also, I wanted it. When I was writing it, and Jack Pransky was very instrumental in guiding me of how to write it. And he kept saying to me, "Don't tell the therapist off because they're not going to listen." So I also wanted it to be for people outside the principals community
yeah.
who are struggling, and they're good people and they want to help,
Yes.
and they're going to another development course and another, you know, educational course and another technique and another, and you know they've got all these, you know, bows to their strings to their bows, and they're not, they're still struggling to help people. So
Mm,
I wanted them to see that we're offering something substantial here. And it's not just individual fluke kind of, you know, one-off recoveries. I gathered 45 stories. I just got a message from Dr. Rani Bora, and she just received her book, and she said, it's almost as thick as a DSM. Right? The DSM is like the Bible of psychiatry, all their diagnosis. And so it's a big textbook. That's why it's, you know, a little bit more expensive than your average paperback, because it is it's a larger format. And I had to stop at some point. You know, I couldn't put all the stories in that I was
mm,
receiving. So I chose 45 that I thought, first of all, they're from around the world, you
yeah.
know, from Chicago to Glasgow to India to New Zealand, right? And
Mm,
they're men and women. And I've got some children stories in there too that are written as case studies or parents have given me. And they're of every diagnosis you can think of, from psychosis to bulimia and anorexia to OCD, ADHD, all kinds of phobias, a lot of depression and anxiety stories, you know, and I'd say child and adolescent ones, and trauma, PTSD, you know. So you think of a mental health diagnosis that we are told you will not recover, you know, you're disabled, you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life, probably on medication. And these people have recovered. And not just recovered, like now they, you know, they're off medication, they don't need any more treatment, they don't need their therapist anymore. It's like, ah. And I've had people say, oh, that's not possible. I'm like, well, now we've got a book. Right, right. All these stories are in one place. And then what I've also done is I did an interview with Dr. Tom Kelly. I don't know if you know that name, but he's a research professor in the States, and he has probably authored over 40 evidence-based Three Principles research papers that have been published. So I
wow.
also got all those into one place. So people say, yeah, but you know, is there any evidence for this? I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
It's in the back of the book, right? And then the final thing I wanted to do was I just got a little introduction to a few non-profit organizations who are bringing this into the community. So it's not
Yeah.
just these fluke stories. And so now you've got the research, and you've got these examples like Spark, who take it into schools, and Beyond Recovery, Insight Alliance, who are going into prisons, and Slice of Happiness, who are working with the homeless. You know, so it's like, okay, I dare you to say this isn't true, this isn't real, and it doesn't work.
Wow, wow. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Did I tell you what it's called?
Oh,
It's called, it's called Beyond Diagnosis. Because I wanted just to point that there's, like, we often talk about going further upstream. There's something
yeah.
beyond the diagnosis. Yes, you've been given a label. Yes, your doctor might have told you that it's, you know, incurable and you're just going to have to live with it. But it's not true. There's something beyond that. So,
I love it. I love it. And I know Rani Bora is a very good friend of mine, and yeah, she talks a lot about beyond diagnosis, and it is, we can easily get caught up in these. I can see how useful it can be when something is going on for you that you don't understand, to have some understanding, like the diagnosis, but we can get stuck in that, and it's so lovely to be taken and to see that there is hope and something beyond that. So that is amazing.
yeah.
Is there one particular story in your book that stands out for you that you can share? Give us a little snippet or something, you know, not too many spoilers, but if there's 45, you know, if you share, there'll be plenty to uncover.
Yeah, there are. I mean, that's not to like dismiss any of the others, because they're all amazing, and I'm so grateful to these people who, you know, have been so generous with their stories and their, you know, vulnerability about, you know, what they went through. And there's a lot of stories in there you will recognize their names, like Jacqueline Hollows and Michael Neal and, you know, Lorica Paynos. And I just admire them for being so willing to, you know, share with us, you know, what they went through. And they're such proof that you can go through hell and then still be available to help other people. And then there's also stories from names of people that are going to be new to people. So one of them, the story I'm going to tell you is one of my clients. There are a few of my clients in the book because, you know, I know their stories.
Yeah.
And I want to share with you one of them. Her name's Heavy Rothenberg, and it's just amazing. Like, she's willing to give her name. She actually had 10 diagnoses.
Wow.
So yeah. So I met her when she was in her early 20s. And it's really interesting. I mean, I live the story is because it was before I knew about the 3 principles. I was volunteering as a mentor in a kind of halfway house for women who were been living on the street and were, you know, were given somewhere to a roof over their head as long as they went and got a job. It was that kind of, you know, place.
Okay.
And I was volunteering. It was in my neighborhood, so I volunteered as a mentor. And sadly, Heavy had tried suicide for the 3rd time, I think, and she was in a mental hospital, which was just outside the city where we live. And I don't know if you've ever tried calling someone who's in a mental hospital. It's quite hard because the nurses are overworked and don't, you know, can't be bothered with calls like that. And if you do get through to the day room, you know, another patient might pick up the phone and go, yeah, I'll get her, and just hang up on you.
Yeah.
You know, I would have to call like 5 times, even though I had arranged with her at 3 o'clock, I'm going to call you. You know, I'd have to call like 5 times before I'd get through to her. And so I was calling her every day, and something was different this time. She wanted to be here. She wanted to stick around. And she finally got out of the hospital. She was on a ton of medication, chain smoking. We managed to find her somewhere to stay, and we got her a minimum wage job. And one of the things that she had been diagnosed with was borderline personality disorder, which, now, most people with borderline disorder have been cutting. She was a cutter, and her cuts were so deep that she would need stitches sometimes. She was also diagnosed with alcoholism, addiction, PTSD, CPTSD, you know, bulimia, anorexia, you know, on and on and on. You know, she had the whole list. But the cutting was, I guess, really the most devastating thing. And I didn't really know she was doing it when I first met her, and it kind of, like, you know, it became clear. She got more honest and shared about it. So we got her this job, and she was actually working in a hotel. You know, she's cleaning toilets. She's a nice middle-class girl from Canada, from Toronto, and she's cleaning toilets in a hotel. And I said to her, okay, what would you really want to do? You know, because this is back before the three principles. I'm just doing regular coaching. Let's get you, you know, a career, and let's get you out of here and get you some, you know, build up your self-esteem. And her dream was to work with special needs kids, and particularly people who are athletes competing in the Special Olympics.
Wow.
Right. So I like, yeah, like,
Yeah, what a
I was
dream.
like, okay. I'm like, okay. I know nothing about that. I mean, I've worked with kids, but I know nothing about the Special Olympics or athletics or anything like that. I said, let's find out. What do we need to do? So she drunk her way out of high school. So she didn't even have any high school diploma or certificates or anything. So she, and also this is, we're in Israel, so she had to do all this in a second language. So she got herself all the credentials she needed to get into university. She did all her local, the high school diploma stuff. And she got into, there's a university here that specialized in sports and nutrition and, you know, physical education, things like that. Yoga, they even have a circus class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a great school, and it's in a town called Netanya, which is on the coast, beautiful place. So she got accepted, but they saw her mental health record and they said, we're so sorry, we can't accept you.
Oh, no.
And she's like, you know, and I said, okay, what do we have to do? Right. And I was just learning about the three principles at this time. And so I was saying to her, you know, you've got innate health, you can do this, you know. And she said, well, what's the point? I tried so hard and I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm like, no, come on, you're innate health, we've got resilience, we can do this. And I said, you're going to go back to the hospital, meet with the psychiatrist, tell them what the situation is, and get them to write you a letter. Because by this time she was off all her medication. She was maybe still chain smoking, maybe not at that point. But she was holding down a job. She'd got into university. Why should a piece of paper
Oh.
hold her back? You know?
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, she got on the bus and went out to the hospital. And you know, in those movies about space rockets going to, there's that time when there's like, you know, they lose communication and you can't hear it and you don't. I felt like that. I was like waiting by the phone because like she's in with the doctor and I'm waiting for the answer. And when she came out, she called me crying. She said the doctor pulled up her file and went all through the diagnosis. That's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. And the doctor, I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, but as I say, female, the doctor in her 40 years of working in psychiatry had never had to write a clean bill of health letter. She didn't know how to do it. She'd never had someone get well. So she made up some form or wrote it out. And then, you know, my client took it to the university. She got in. She came top of her, she did a 3-year physical education class. She came top of the year. They encouraged her to start her master's before she even finished her undergrad. And by the way, this is a girl with dyslexia and learning difficulties. That was on her list of problems. She finished her master's degree, and guess what? She got to train with the Israeli Special Olympics team. So, and
Wow.
she's now training to be a sports judge, like judging competitions, which is amazing. So, and she's a personal, you know, coach, and she's just you know, amazing what she's done. Her life has just taken off. You know, it's amazing. And you know, from living on the street and with such a, you know, dark, horrible world she was living in. And it's like, so it's like, as I was learning the principles, I was sharing it with her, and she's like, at first she's like, yeah, what, like, oh, it's just another technique. I've heard it all before, you know. And now she's like, she talks about you know, like moving from within. When she talks physical education, she's moving from within because the insights are, she's you know, if anybody wants a personal trainer, she's amazing.
Wow, wow. I love that. I love that. And it is so beautiful that there are so many stories like that across the board. How much hope, like how far down we can go. And yet that innate well-being, that innate resilience that we have within us, that we can turn. We as human beings, like we are born creators. And I love it when you say, no, we're not going to be stopped at this. We're not going to be stopped. It's great, isn't it? To feel that and to know that no matter what, there is a way forward. There is always something more to be seen when we, so wow, what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. A story of hope for us all. Wow. How exciting. So
Mhm.
how did coming, I mean, you talked there about that was when you first came across the principles. How did it change things for you and your coaching and how you are, how you interact
Mhm.
with your clients?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing when I look back now. When I was coaching before, kind of like what I was doing with her, I was quite the micromanager. Okay, people who are really struggling, people who are, coming out of mental hospitals or addicts or whatever, I'd say, okay, have a shower and call me back. It's like, then have a cup of coffee and call me back, like, because we didn't have, WhatsApp and all that then,
Mm,
so, it was, um, trying to stay in touch with people who were just, like, they just disappear and you'd lose them. And like, so I felt that I had to really get them up and get them going. It was like I was their innate well-being, I was their
yeah,
resilience, they had,
yeah.
and it's not that I thought I could fix anybody. I just thought they're so used to just giving up and people giving up on them. I wanted to be their cheerleader. I felt like I had to cheerlead them into well-being. and And now what changed was when I started seeing that they already had that in them, that innate health is, they have health.
Mm,
Um, it's just gotten covered up. So my job now is to, a combination of a lot of listening and a lot of pointing to the old ideas that are holding us back and seeing that it's just an idea. Excuse me. Like sometimes people say to me, oh, I couldn't do what you do. They say, why not? They go, well, I'm too shy. I'm like, well, maybe I'm shy too. Maybe I'm shy and I just don't listen to that thinking anymore. Excuse me. And, so helping people see past the stories. I think that's what a lot of these diagnoses, for example, I guarantee you think of any diagnosis, if you were to play the videotape backwards, before they arrived at the hospital, before they arrived at the doctor, before they got into such a state, I guarantee you it started with some prolonged stressful thinking,
yeah.
right? And so, and I remember when I was learning with George Pransky, and Dr. George Pransky, I remember he said to me one time, he said, the DSM is really a list of coping mechanisms.
Mm,
And this person copes by drinking, that one copes by eating or not eating. This one's coping by being a workaholic. This one's coping by getting loud and violent. This one's coping by cutting or, you know,
yeah.
going into different realities. I like chocolate and watching movies. We all have, our ways of coping sometimes.
Yep.
And so when I understand that's what's happening, so what I do with my clients now is like, we want to find out what is going on, the not even what's going on, it's more about what are the signals that I'm dropping back into that old behavior. Because I've noticed for myself, like in the past, chronic pain was a big thing for me.
Mm,
And that was like my body screaming at me. So I've worked with a lot of people with physical issues, and I see like every time it's like their bodies are screaming at them to slow down and stop. And now it's weird, I've kind of become sensitive in a good way. Before I was sensitive in like, oh, don't hurt my feelings, um, so yeah. And now my sensitivity is more, I guess, what you could call awareness. I
yeah.
can catch myself before I'm at the bottom of the hill with screaming in physical pain.
Yep.
So that's what I like to share with my clients now. I say that, how do you know that you're about to step on the down escalator, as it were?
Mm, yeah.
And for some people, like I know for me, it's losing my sense of humor. It might be get a bit impatient, a bit
Mm.
sarcastic. I know that I'm not in the moment. I'm not in my best mind, and I'm tripping into some dangerous water. And helping people to see that then, and it's not out of fear. I'm not frightened of being in a bad mood. I'm not frightened of those emotions and
Mm.
feelings, but showing it, you don't have to go into it. If you understand how the thought works and how the mind works, then we can, we can ride the waves of life rather than being, overwhelmed by them.
I think,
So
like for me, when I came across the principles, just somebody saying to me, you don't have to listen to your thoughts if you don't want to. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous. That's something so simple. Nobody had ever said that to me before. And like I
No.
was in my 40s, and it was like nobody had ever said to me, you don't have to think that. It was
Mhm.
absolutely, if something was in my mind, to me, it was rooted in some kind of truth somewhere, and I needed to deal with
Yeah.
whatever it was. And I
Yeah.
know that was what got me into all sorts of trouble, because it just, as I'm sure you can imagine, and
Yeah.
it looked like I had to deal with all of this stuff. And like you
Yeah.
say, one of the things that I really can see now is if my mind starts to do that, I'm no longer afraid of that. And it is also, oh, the only thing I'm having to deal with here is the thinking. There's not all
Yeah.
this stuff out here that my thinking is telling me that
Yeah.
it's dealing with. It's kind of, and the same, it is often, right, have a rest, step back,
Mhm.
don't worry
Mhm.
about that thinking for a bit, have a sleep or do something else and see
Yeah.
if it's still
Yeah.
there tomorrow or whatever.
Right.
Because our thinking, it changes so quickly, doesn't it? When we don't give it so much airtime and give it so much uh, innocently misunderstand and give it so much power.
Yeah. You're right. I used to take it as a when I would get my thinking would speed up, or I get worried, or I get, self-conscious or something. I would take that as an invitation to analyze, look into it, see what's wrong, overthink it. And now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Like that's why we always stress the innocent thing, because I didn't understand. I thought it was an invitation, an encouragement to that something is wrong, you better work it out, because that would be the responsible thing to do. Right. But now I see it's a stop sign. So if I get a bit serious, or I get a bit impatient, or I get, or I start feeling it physically. Like I always ask people, where do you feel it in your body? Like, is it,
Mm,
like some people feel it in their chest, some people feel it in their hands, their throat, stomach. I always used to feel it in my tension in my shoulder. My
yeah.
shoulders would go up and I'd get a bit
Mm,
tense. So now I just see those as signals or
yeah.
stop signs to that they're alerting me, and it's wisdom. It's not a conspiracy. It's not an invitation. It's information. Like
Mm,
like like your stomach rumbles when you're hungry. My shoulders get tight when I get anxious. So if I can even feel that, or even there's things before that
yeah.
even happening, like sentences like, like no one understands, and like what's the point, and I'm like, what? When that kind of, even the language of my thinking starts to change when I'm heading in the wrong direction.
Mm,
And so the more we can be aware of that, like you were saying, it's like the more I'm aware of that, I don't have to be frightened of it. It's going to pass, and you like ride the wave of it
mm.
much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I think awareness is, and I think that is, like you say, when you were doing your coaching beforehand, when you didn't know this, it's difficult to make other people aware of it when you're not aware of it yourself, which is great. Your book being out and being out there, sharing this and
Mm-hmm.
sharing the simplicity of those kinds of things. Just being, I know another one for me was just question that thought a little bit, look at it and actually say, do you actually think this? Because I can't tell you how many times I would have a thought and it wouldn't even occur to me that I might not want to think that. It might not be my opinion, but it would be in my head. And so
Yes.
it must be mine, and it must be something I would have to act on. And just sort of taking a second and just going, do you actually think this? Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
would be about not liking someone or being mean, or like this when you're tired or grumpy or something like this, and then it'd be
Yeah.
like, well, they're horrible, and then that would mean I would be horrible. And to actually, do you actually really think that?
You're right.
We can all, as human beings with people, I'm sure, if you hang out with somebody long enough, however much you like, in some moments you'd be like, oh, that Hannah, she's a pain in the ass. And it's like, do you actually think that? And just recognizing that we don't have to listen in that same way and take it. So I think awareness is huge. And then there was something else that you said that I'd really like to pick up on and expand. And that was, you said there's a lot of listening. And I know, a lot of people in the three principles world and this looking in this direction talk a lot about listening. Can you share a
Mhm.
little bit maybe about your experience of that and the difference that makes?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny because I've been coaching for what, 20 something years, and I thought I was a good listener. I must be, because this is what I do, right? And I when I went, I did the One Thought program with Aaron Turner in London, and as part of the program, we had a whole weekend on listening. And I remember at the beginning of it, Aaron was talking about what it is, and how useful it is, and how important it is in coaching, and how it helps you to be present with your client. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. Right? And then over the course of the weekend, we had to split up into pairs and do practice listening, with my, I'm like, okay, fine, we can do that. So there was probably like 25 people in my group. And the first person I was paired with was Nikki Drew. Nikki, she's in the, oh, she's in the Midlands. She's written a couple of books. She I don't know if she's still doing it, but at the time she was a psychologist for, I can't remember, Sheffield or anyway, at a university in the Midlands. And she's the psychologist for the students to go to, not a teacher, but like someone for the student body.
Yeah.
And so the arrangement was, we'd each have to talk for 5 minutes, pick a subject. And the first time we weren't even allowed to say or anything. You just like sit on your hands, and I mean, that wasn't the goal. It was just for the first, like, an experiential thing. So Nikki was talking about her job and working with the students and bringing the principals into her work. And I'm like, and I was dying to ask her questions, and and like, have you read this book? And oh, that's such a great thing. Or can you tell me? And my head was so busy. And I was like, wow, like, until I actually did that, like, you don't realize how busy your head is until you try to like find out how not quiet it is. And it was kind of entertaining. And then we switched, and she had to listen to me. And then my next partner was Charles Rosenblatt. Charles was on my course. Charles was one of the directors of the London conference. And he's going on about, because he's a rabbi, and he's talking about, Jewish books and what's interesting him. And I'm like, really? And my mind was a bit quieter, but I was still, we were allowed to kind of like go, and, like, nod our heads and stuff at this point, just be a bit more normal. And I was a bit more present, but I was still like very aware that, Charles, my partner, and like, what's he doing on this course? Like, really? I was still a bit like up in my head a bit. And then my third partner, so I'm not going to mention any names because there was a lot of people on this course, and people that nobody knows. And so my third partner was someone, I'm just going to say that the topic they chose was the London Underground system, or London transport system. I'm like, really? And so this is the end of the weekend. We've had lots of sessions and lots of talking about this. And I have to tell you that I was absolutely fascinated. Now, I did live in London for a few years, but this colleague talked about how amazing the London Underground map is. It's award-winning. Like, and Japanese tourists can get off at Heathrow and just follow the color and find out where they need to go. You can get one ticket, and it would take you from your hotel to a museum, to the class where we were doing, and then to his daughter's house. And and I was like, I was hanging on every word. And it was like, wow. And the experience, like the truth I got out of that was, when my mind is quiet, I can be present to anybody or anything. And it's only my busy mind that's separating me from the client and or the friend or the family member. It doesn't have to always be at work, and so my mind quiets down. And then I just want to tell one quick story that actually ties in with the new book. So all the people whose stories are in the book, I gave them the choice that either they could write it themselves and send it to me as a Word document, or I could do a Zoom like this, and I could record it and I would transcribe it, whatever they wanted to do to make it easier. So it was about half and half what people decided to do. So one of the people I interviewed was Rob Cook. Rob Cook is in the States. He's in the PTSD section in the book. He was in the military, so he's had some terrible times in Afghanistan, and he tells an incredible story. So Rob's really busy. It took us a long time to be able to like pin down a time when we could talk. And the first time we tried, the internet wasn't working for either of us, and we had to, go back in, go back in, come back in again. So finally we got going, and he told me this amazing story. And then, thanks, Rob, that was amazing, great, I'm going to transcribe it, I'll send it to you for your approval. And I clicked off Zoom. I hadn't pressed record. I was like, oh my God.
I just looked up at the recording now.
Right? Because pinning him down was so hard. Like getting this one particular interview was really hard to negotiate. And I thought, read it quick. So I wrote probably 800 words like this, and I wrote out his story as much. I mean, some of the kind of technical military stuff I had no clue, but I thought he can edit it for me. I just wrote out Rob Cook's story, and it just came off the end of my fingers. And afterwards, I was like, "Whoa, how did I do that?" And I thought, oh, it's because I was listening. Because I knew, I thought I was recording it. I didn't really have to be up in my head thinking of questions, or I was present. It was such an amazing experience because I was so present, because I didn't need to be, I wasn't coaching him. I just had to listen, and I knew it was recorded. I thought it was, so I didn't have to be that involved in it. I could edit it and ask him questions later if I needed to. And he did, he did edit it and edit it a little bit in, and I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry. He's like, these things happen. He's very easygoing about it. So his story's in the book, but that was an amazing experience and I'm saying I'm not always that present, but to be able to write 800 words of somebody else's story.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, I still can't believe it. How did that happen? So yeah, it's really about being present, that my personal thinking gets in the way. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, and with clients I can sometimes, often get think of a question, or I'll go remember that and ask them, but it's changed a lot of how I am with people. Yeah.
It's amazing how different we are when our thinking has settled down, hasn't it? And when you were saying a bit about the London Underground, what was occurring to me when you were saying that was it's amazing how we can shut down to stuff, because like you say, if somebody gives you a title and you think, oh no, I'm not interested in that, and straight away that's our thinking again, isn't it, jumping in and just already assessing and making a judgment about what it is and how it's going to be. And then we don't hear amazing things sometimes because we've already shut ourselves down to something.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
So what would you say has been the biggest thing that's had an impact on you since coming across the principles? What would you say has been the biggest thing that's had an impact on you?
I think the first big insight I got was really seeing that I didn't have to do anything to fix my thinking, or that my thinking didn't even need fixing. Because, for that 20-something years I was coaching before, I'd done a lot of courses. I was a trauma counselor, worked with people with addictions. I'm a certified Enneagram life coach, if you know what the Enneagram is.
Not really. I sort of heard about it, but not really.
The Enneagram is like it's a personality assessment system. It's kind of like Myers-Briggs, where you meet with your client and you go, oh, you're a number 5, you're a number 2, and then you've got all these tools in your toolkit to how to work with those. And I do believe that there are different kinds of personalities. Some are more analytical, some are more, feeling their emotions. Some people are more passive, and some people more, so that, but it was very restrictive. But all these, I'd learned a lot of tools and techniques over the years, and I'd done a lot of stuff for myself. I'd done a lot of meditation, going on silent retreats and expressive writing, yoga and Pilates and all that stuff, whether it's physical stuff, internal stuff. I went through a lot of trauma in my 20s, so I'd done a lot of work on, and I think I'd gotten really good at thought hygiene.
I like it.
Right? I was expert at thought hygiene, and that's what I was sharing with my clients. Those people are always making them call me back, like, now we're gonna I could give you affirmations and expressive writing techniques and meditation and prayer and whatever would be throw at it to control and manage your thinking and keep it clean and positive. Because having been through a lot of PTSD, I know what dark thinking is like. I know how dark and negative thinking can get. And I didn't want to go back there. I was frightened of going back there. And so I had all these tools and techniques like an armor, keeping those negative thoughts away. So my thought life was hygienic and healthy and positive, and that's what I can share with other people. And that's what I was on a mission to do. And it was exhausting. It was such hard work. So when I first heard Sid talk and on videos, and he was talking about, that we don't actually have to do anything because thought is always moving, because it's spiritual energy, and this is where I always start moving my hands around, because I can't, I don't know what I'm talking about. Who knows what spiritual energy is, right? And it's moving through, because if it's moving, then it's already gone. So all those tools and techniques are kind of messing with the system, actually. So an analogy I came up with recently, I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, was I said, it's like, when you're in the supermarket and you've got your trolley, your cart full of all those groceries, and you get to the checkout, where there's that rubber conveyor belt, and you start putting your groceries on, and the person, the checkout is, eep, 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 like checking all these things, the little barcode buzzing noises. Right. So there could be some frozen peas, and then some chicken, and then some soap, and then some, like a can of beans, and then some socks, right? Now, the person checking them out doesn't care. Right? Right? They don't care. And if you've got 10 cans of beans, they don't care, right? Because to them, it's groceries, right? It's all groceries. So the analogy is, it's all thought. But when we get caught up, this thought and that thought seem very important. Now it's as if the person picks up your like, you really need 6 tins of beans, like, oh, those socks are on sale. It's like that. If the person got involved in your groceries, first of all, it would take so much longer, and it'd be wasting your time, and also to go further with the analogy, it'd be like putting all your stuff in the shopping bag and then taking them out and then looking at them. What do you think about this? They've already been put in the bag, right? So all those tools and techniques that I was getting very proficient at was like taking the groceries out of the bag and then putting them through the checkout again. They already got checked out. They already left, right? And if you've got 10 chickens and 6 pairs of socks, so what, right? It's like, you'll use them someday. It's like, so I see that was kind of really the biggest insight for me, that kind of got me like really interested in the principles, because I saw the truth in that, and I saw how effortless it could be, and how when you see the beauty of that, you automatically come back to your well-being, which was there all the time, just got covered up with some of that stinky thinking. And then what happened for me personally was then, and I really don't know when it happened, but I'd had this chronic pain for 25 years. I remember one day sitting in this chair just going like, where did it go? It's gone. And I like checked in with my back, and I thought, wow, I feel stronger than I couldn't remember when, like since I was a teenager. And after thinking, that my back is going to crumble at any moment, which is a very heavy story to carry around. And that's how I ended up starting to work with people with physical issues, because I didn't work on it to make it go away. I think that was the big thing that really landed with me, is that it went away as a result of my thinking slowing down. That's what I understand anyway. My body didn't need to scream at me anymore, because I'd come more present and more in the moment. And to be able to share that with other people is, it's amazing to see them get those insights too.
Yeah, I love the fact of insight, that we all have insights. It's not there's nothing different about any of us. We all have these insights. And to me, again, that comes back around to the awareness, doesn't it? Just being aware that, wow, yeah, that was an insight. Something has shifted and changed. Something looks different. I remember one day being in the kitchen, and a similar thing, like, but if I used to, I've never really been in chronic pain, but if I got stressed, it was always in my shoulders. You know, I could always feel it, like across my shoulders, that
Yeah.
I would ache, and often at the end of the day, I just have achy shoulders, and I just thought that was just how it was. You know,
Yeah.
you were doing stuff all day. By the end of the day, you just got achy shoulders. And then I remember being in the kitchen one day, and I was just like wiping down the work surface and cleaning around the kitchen as you do, whatever. And I suddenly realized how tensely I was holding myself. You know, I wasn't cleaning the kitchen, I was cleaning the kitchen.
Right.
I was really, really sort of holding it tensely. And I just noticed, I was like, wow, what would happen? And if I just let go of it? And I started to notice that I drove like that, and I would often be in conversations like that, and you know, I mean, I kind of did it a bit, but you know, even like this, I would just, there would be some tension there, you know, I would be holding, and to me, it was an idea that it's on me, you know, I've got to do this, and even the cleaning, you know, I've got to do this, rather than, you know, there's water there, there's a cloth there, you're moving it, yeah, but you don't have to do it to that extent. And just seeing that, and I think as we look in this direction, like you say, as we begin to understand, things just start making sense and occur to us, because that, you know, I don't know where that thought, I just noticed, and I must have been doing that for years, you know, just cleaning the kitchen with and doing many things. I used to get exhausted when I drove, and I didn't really realize why. And again, it's because I was just holding myself with so much tension.
Right.
Just this one kind of thing, oh, you just don't have to do that.
Wow. Yeah, it's true. Like I clenched my jaw, you know, like, you know, I clenched my jaw so tightly in high school. I had to have like those like little guards to, you know, um, and yeah, I still catch myself sometimes like, oh, you could actually relax a bit more. Yeah, good to know. Yeah, yeah, that's a great story. Yeah.
And to me, it is more looking in the direction. I know one of the things when I speak to my clients, I kind of say, find a way to stay in this conversation in a way that makes sense to you, to kind to keep up looking in this direction and seeing. And as much as anything, it is keeping that awareness and, you know, the awareness of your thinking, that we can suddenly be caught out with a thought that looks really real, and it is like, oh yeah, like you say, recognizing, oh my gosh, I'm doing that again, aren't I? Begins to recognize the signs, whether it is our body or our mind. We are always being given signs and little nudges, and like you said, chronic pain, we don't go from nothing to chronic pain, and usually it's not like that. It's very often it builds up, doesn't it? And it's like until your body is screaming at you to do something. And it is like learning to recognize more earlier and earlier and earlier. Oh yeah, I'm doing that thing that I do.
Right. Yeah. It really was fascinating because for myself and a lot of people with physical issues, we just see the symptoms and
Yeah.
think, oh well, there must be a biological reason for it. You know, and when I talk about chronic pain, it includes everything from migraines to, you know, itchy skin to stomach problems to fertility problems, all kinds of things. And it's like our bodies just weren't built to sustain that level of stress. And this is actually something it took me a few years in the principles to understand. Um, I didn't realize just how anxious I was.
I hear that all the time, you know.
Right? I
Yeah.
didn't even think I was anxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I like, you've met me, I'm tall, right? I can walk to a room and like, you know, I can't not be, like, I can't be any smaller. And I was a coach, and I was, you know, like, you know, working in the academy, you know, Academy Award winning, you know, film job. It was like, I'm successful. I don't have anxiety. I like, other people have anxiety. My clients have anxiety, right? And then as I started understanding more about the mind and how it works, and then I was doing a lot of this pain research, and I this um this phenomenal moment when I was reading a pain management book, and the author of the book, you know, he's a chiropractor or a physiotherapist, I think, And he was saying how, he said, gave this example. He said, imagine that you've been invited to your boss's house for drinks, you know, like for an evening social thing. And, you know, you're excited to go, right? You think, wow, go to the boss's house, you know, like, you know, this is good. So if it's called for 8 p.m. So you want to get there a little bit early because, you know, you want to find somewhere to park. You know, you've never been to that part of the city before, so you want to make sure you get some parking. So you get there and there's plenty of parking, and you park down a side street, and you're like, you're 10 minutes early, and you're like, well, you can't, you know, it doesn't start till 8 o'clock, so you can't go in early. That's really weird. So you sit in your car. Now, 10 minutes is a really long time when you're sitting in your car. So, you know, you're playing on your phone, you might call a friend, you're like fiddling with the radio, and then you're like, oh, thank God, like it's 8 o'clock. And then you think, hold on, I can't go in exactly at 8 o'clock because that's really lame. Who arrives at a social event right on 8 o'clock, right? So you think, okay, so I'll have to wait a little bit. Well, how long do I wait? How long is the right amount of time? Like, because I don't want to be flaky late, right? That's embarrassing because that's not me. I'm going to be cool late. What is cool late? I don't know. What is cool late? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Right? And then you see someone go in and you're like, oh, look, like I won't be the first person. Now I can go in. And he's like, that's anxiety. I'm like, really? Is it? I've lived my whole life like that, right? You know? Am I wearing the right shoes? What was my hair doing? Like, why did she say that to me? They don't like me. Why aren't they talking to me? You know, blah, 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 blah. Up in my head the whole time. I just thought that's what everybody does. That's what the mind is for. That's why you know, it's the responsible thing to do, to like overthink your problem. I'm overthinking. It's, I'm going to really think about this to work out a solution.
Work it out.
I'm going to work it out, work it out, work it out. And when just that simple little story flipped something in my head where I thought, oh my gosh. And then I started having, I don't call them flashbacks because that sounds dramatic, but memories, so many situations throughout my life where I thought, oh my gosh, that was anxiety. Whether you call it social anxiety or driving anxiety or arriving on time anxiety, it doesn't matter what you call it, you know? But the general theme of my anxiety was about doing it right. Doing it the right way, not making a mistake. You know, what would you think of me if I don't do it right? Because then you'll reject me and I'll be alone, and that's too painful. So it was just another amazing layer of thinking that fell away. And another ability to share that with clients also, I think is, you know, I think that's the humanness. That was one of the things that impressed me when I first came around the principles, was the humanness of the teachers that were willing to say, you know, yeah, that I can still get caught up sometimes. I'm human, and it's, you know, sometimes my kids drive me crazy. Sometimes, you know, I get worried about my business. That's what happens, and it's okay because it's gonna pass. And so it was like that was such a revelation to me that I was anxious too. And it's pretty much gone away. I can walk into social situations now. I can actually be late, and I'm okay with it. And if I'm on time, that's okay too. You know, it's like I don't have so much thinking about it anymore. That's the freedom. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, that definitely. When you were saying that, I really recognise, I didn't realise, and similar to you, it was a theme that I had run my whole life. I've got to get it right. If I get it right, then it will be all right. And if I don't get it right, it won't.
Yeah.
My story wasn't chronic pain, but my story was like being in a very unhealthy, abusive relationship. And it was like, I'm guessing your kind of stuff is, if I get this right, the pain will go away. And I'm kind of like, if I get this right, this will all work out. Everything will be all right if I get it right. And it was this whole idea that there even was, you know, it fell away for me when I was kind of like, there just isn't such a thing. You know,
it's an impossibility. So no wonder we were stressed about it.
Because it's like, who makes up what is socially acceptable as late, or, and you know, it changes or whatever. And it's, and I really see from, you know, being around this, and exactly like you said, if you are just certain about who you are, I've really seen it's much more of an energetic thing, because if you go in thinking, oh, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, everything comes at you to give you ideas that you're wrong, that you got it wrong, you weren't, you were too late or too early or whatever.
Right.
You got it wrong. You didn't work it out. Work harder at that. You didn't work it out. And there would be so much evidence of that when you are not understanding what your feelings and what's going on with your thinking and your feeling. And for me, the same, it was just like years and years and years of trying to get it right and trying to access to you know, see it by, the more uncomfortable I felt, the more that I thought I had to think about it, and the more wrong I thought I was getting it. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's
Just
so depressing. And you're right, like it's like, so I had a mentor many years ago and she said to me, you have such high standards for everybody and you can't even live up to them yourself. And I'm like, I'm trying. It's like, you're right, I would make stuff up and like then like when I worked in Hollywood, I made up this thing that success meant that my name was on the poster. And so anything less than being up there, they call it above the line, like, the producer and director and all that kind of people. So that's where I had to get to. Otherwise, I wasn't successful. I'm like, that's just so, it's made up. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
yeah, when we begin to see through the made up nature of all of this stuff, and it's what causes us the stress, isn't it? Like when you say there is an exact right time to arrive at an event, nobody's going to
Yeah.
tell you what it is. You've got
Right.
to work it out and guess it, and you've got to get it right.
Right. It's like, in your head, if not, It's like,
And you can see it's like, it's an impossible equation, isn't it? It's like with that information, and that's what I really started to see with the information that I was trying to work the situation out. I simply hadn't got enough information to come, because there wasn't a right, it simply wasn't possible. But if you just say, right, yeah, you've got to get at the party, you've got to get there at the right time, but nobody's going to tell you, give you any clues to what that is. You've got to get, you just can't. And so it's no wonder that we do get tense and stressed and cause ourselves. And I guess different people, that for me, what I've noticed with people I've worked with, that comes out in different people in different ways. Like like the chronic illness thing you said, it can be anything from back pain to fertility issues to all sorts of things across the board.
Yeah.
And for me, it was relationship stuff. The more
Yeah.
it's just like, I couldn't do it right. I couldn't do it right. And the more stressed I got, the harder it got to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I see same thing. I see if it's not physical, then it'll come out in relationships. It comes out in like bankruptcies, divorces, like it's, being alienated from your kids or your parents, it's like it impacts, our whole lives. And then the opposite is true. Like now, like with the understanding, it's like how much easier relationships are, and not just with myself,
Yes.
I have to have the right shoes and be on the right time and do it all right. It's like and I could never admit before that I made a mistake, and now it's like, big deal. So I just finished with this. My new book, when I put it up on Amazon, I spelt the title wrong, which not only would be embarrassing, but then you're not going to be able to find the book. So I was like, oh no. And I got in with Amazon and I got somebody on a chat instantly. Like, how did I get someone from Amazon on a chat instantly? And I said to them, I'm a complete idiot. You've got to help me. And they said, oh, well, once it's published, it's published. You can't do anything. I was like, and they go, and then she checked. She said, oh, because it was only published yesterday, we can still change it. Because, because and she said, and I said, I love you. Thank you. And then after I finished that, I realized it was, I wasn't, my stomach didn't hit my throat. I wasn't upset because I thought, worst comes to the worst, I'll just delete the whole thing and start over, right? Because you could take it down if you wanted to. And it was just like, just deal with it, And it was just I found the whole thing funny rather than embarrassing, It was like, like I can't spell, so it's okay. It's funny that I'm writing books. Thank God for spell check and editors,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, finishing on a note of humor and everything. So if people, you've mentioned Amazon, so if people are interested in getting your book, tell us the title again and tell us how we can get your book. And obviously it will be underneath this video, hopefully, all the information.
Thank you.
Do tell us.
Thank you. Yeah. So the new book is called Beyond Diagnosis, and the subtitle, I remember, the subtitle is A Paradigm Shift from Pathology to Innate Health. So that's the book. It's on Amazon now. And it is a big book. Like, this is a demo one that I did, so you can see, like, you know, this is the Enlightened Gardener, right? And it's even thicker than this now. So people are like, well, that's kind of expensive. No, but it's a textbook. It's a resource that's going to last you a very long time. And I've made a website to go with it, which is beyond-diagnosis.com. And there, so if people have stories that they want to share, it's not too late. We can put them on the website. So I want that to be like an ongoing resource that we can keep adding new stories of hope and new stories of recovery. So if anybody listening has a story they want to share, please let me know, and we can put that on the website as well for people to get hope from. So yeah.
I love, love, love what you are up to in the world. I love this work, and it is so, I have seen so many people whose lives have been completely turned around by looking in this direction. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking time out to speak to me
Yeah.
and share so beautifully and laugh with me.
And I want to say happy birthday to you, and happy birthday to me, because I'm going to be 60 in a couple of weeks.
It's brilliant. You don't have to worry about anything. It's cool. So much love. So much love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Pleasure. Bye. Bye.